right, everybody, welcome in for another episode of the Entrepreneur Aligned podcast. I am your host, as always, Jarrod Music. And I'm excited today to talk about an interesting facet of business ownership when you start getting past a single owner and into multiple equity owners, multiple partners inside the business. So the reason that I bring this up on a podcast that's dedicated to personal finance for entrepreneurs is the number one source of our wealth, what drives our ongoing cash flows, what's going to create our future wealth is almost always your business. And so treating it like an investment and forecasting it like an investment is paramount. So when we think about equity management, we're talking about who actually owns units of the business, who has control over the business, and who benefits from the cash flows of the business and an ultimate sale at some point down the road. So for most of us, when we start, we're solos, we're bootstrapping. Maybe we've gotten some friends and family money. Perhaps we've been fortunate enough to raise some capital or take on debt. But it's usually us. The cap table, as we would look at it, has one name, one person, one entity, and that's the way that it is. But as your business starts growing and scaling, you may be looking at adding other people to that. So I'll take my own industry, for example. When we have professional services businesses, you have key employees who become increasingly valuable to the business and start to contribute things that are in excess of the value that a regular employee would contribute. So these could be things where they're building a specific line of business or a specific product, something that is really unique and different to the business, and they bring a skill set that you would want in terms of a partner in that business. So offering to sell them equity or allowing them to earn equity along the way is usually part of the strategy to incentivize, retain, and grow with these key people inside your organization. So there's a number of different channels to be able to do that. If you're in a different industry and perhaps you're acquiring competitors, you're acquiring people via acquisition, and they may have owned 100% of their entity prior to merging over. Now they're 20% of the combined equity. They're now a partner. They're now on the cap table. If you're raising money and you're having to do different equity units that go along with raising that capital, that certainly is going to be a whole different conversation. But in any of these cases, when you start to add people to your cap table, you want to think about shareholder rights and responsibilities. So let's think of a very simple level where you're adding a second partner to a one partner business. What issues are going to be voted on between the two of you? How are you going to assign votes? Is it directly proportionate to the amount of equity that you own in the business? If it's 80-20 in terms of ownership, like the example I just shared, probably not. If it's 60-40, you may look at more equal voting for certain things and then voting your shares for others. So really thinking through the governance structure that you want and why you're going to want to vote in certain ways for certain items is going to be really important. And you also want to carry this through and really look at your longer term plan. So if you're currently in a bootstrapped business and you're going, we're going to need to seek outside capital here, and those outside investors are going to want equity, not just giving us debt, how are we going to put them on the cap table, and what types of rights are they going to demand as part of their investment, right? So these could be seats on a board of directors. They could be certain sign-offs for certain events of the company. They could be triggering actions that allow them to purchase more equity or outs to be able to go ahead and divest themselves of that equity. It can get fairly complicated and further than I want to get in the context of this podcast, but thinking through the long-term plan, you want to look forward 10 years and go, okay, after I've raised a seed series, an A, B, C, D, and then we have some type of exit event, how much of the company am I actually going to own? How much control am I going to retain at each of those events as we go forward in time? Those are really, really important things to think about so that you don't end up effectively out of control and out of the table of success when that ultimate event happens. For most of us who are not in venture-backed companies, we're really looking at, okay, at what point do I want to be able to control my own destiny? At what point do I want to have a really large say in the destiny of the firm? And at what point am I okay not being in control? And how am I going to map that over to my personal financial situation? So when we start thinking about these, they're almost scenario building exercises. So let's go back to this 80-20 two-partner firm, and part of your strategy over the next 10 years is you want to do 5 other major acquisitions. You want to do them without utilizing debt or coming up with cash. So you're going to bring all of these firms in, add their existing owners to your cap table, and you're going to grow in that way. The combined valuation of those different practices that are now part of one entity is going to be greater than the sum of their parts. So it works really well for everybody. And you have a really good growth and marketing engine. So you want to be growing at 25% a year all the way through that time period. By the time you've done all of these acquisitions, you may be in a much smaller minority equity position. Let's say you own 25 or 30%. Well, if the valuation of your firm before you did your first acquisition was $1 million, and you carry this all the way through with the growth rates plus the acquisitions, maybe the value of the firm is now $25 million. Does that still get you and your family home to own 30% of a $25 million business that's intended to sell externally in 10 years' time? Those are the type of scenario questions that you really want to be asking yourself as you look at your business equity management program and what you want to do. Each company is unique and different, and you need to think about these in a unique and different way. But they need to match business strategy, personal strategy, and personal financial outcome, and make sure that it works in all 3 of those dimensions. And you also just want to ask those, what if scenarios, right? Let's say you get down and you are that 30% shareholder and you didn't want to exit, but your 70% shareholders do. Do they have the authority to force that exit? Or vice versa, have you retained some type of voting control via different share classes throughout that time, and you want to exit at 30% and your 70% shareholders don't want to, but they don't have the votes? How is that actually going to go down? How valuable is your business going to be if 70% of the equity owners are really unhappy with some event? So just thinking logically through all of these, working with your estate planner, your business attorney, and certainly your financial team. This is a big part of what we do for our client families, is really thinking through what is the business equity strategy and what do you need to be accounting for now, and what decisions that are irreversible or very difficult to undo should you be taking a lot of care and diligence with. Hopefully this was helpful, just thinking about the basics of closely held business equity management, some of the decisions that you may need to make, and just being really tailored and customized to your business and your family and your personal financial needs. There's always a good way to get to what you need to, but there are always trade-offs and decisions to be made in order to make your business what it wants to be and your family and their lives what you want those to be as well. So hopefully this was helpful to start thinking about that. If you want more information about closely held business equity management, head over to entrepreneuraligned.com. We have lots of articles and goodies on here. If you're struggling in this area, reach out to us directly. We're always happy to hop on a call and help think through some of these decisions from a strategic level. Thanks for giving me some of your very valuable time, and I'll be back with you again soon.